On September 27, 2023, an experienced trail runner set out on a 28-mile loop through Rocky Mountain National Park. Chad Pallansch, 49, knew the terrain and expected to return to his trailhead by day's end. He never came back. The search that followed would span some of the most unforgiving alpine wilderness in Colorado and turn up nothing. No trace, no remains, no answers. How a runner this experienced vanished into the Rockies is a mystery that starts with the route itself. Public records from Fort Collins, Colorado, confirm his background as a resident and a highly disciplined athlete. Outside of his professional life, his pursuit of mountain running was defined by technical precision and physical stamina. His familiarity with the park's demanding terrain was extensive, marked by more than 30 successful summits of Long's Peak, the park's signature 14,000-foot giant. This was a runner accustomed to high-altitude endurance and rapid movement across rocky ground. On this solo outing, he planned to complete a custom loop connecting two major trailheads on the western side of the Continental Divide. He drove to the Grand Lake area, leaving his Subaru Outback parked at the North Inlet Trailhead to serve as his finish line. He then walked to the starting point at the East Inlet Trailhead, ready to push into the remote backcountry, where his path would lead past Lake Verna and upward toward the high, windswept peaks of the Continental Divide. On September 27, 2023, the runner set out on a self-designed 28-mile loop. Rather than targeting a single peak, this was a massive, multi-area objective planned as a challenging same-day outing. The route required traveling across both established trails and rugged off-trail alpine zones. After passing Lake Verna, the planned sequence climbed toward the 13,000-foot summit of Mount Alice. From there, he intended to cross the windswept Continental Divide, pushing along exposed high-altitude ridges toward Chief's Head Peak. The route then dropped down into the glacier-carved basins of the eastern slope, passing through Black Lake and Mills Lake. The final leg of the run demanded a grueling ascent over Flat Top Mountain before a long final descent back to his parked vehicle at the North Inlet Trailhead. This expansive layout connected several distinct wilderness sectors, creating a massive geographic footprint that would later complicate any efforts to trace his exact path. The initial miles from the East Inlet Trailhead follow a maintained path, climbing nearly 1,800 feet over 7 miles to Lake Verna. But beyond this subalpine basin, the route transforms. To reach the 13,315-foot summit of Mount Alice, a climber must leave established trails behind. Here, flat map distances lose their meaning. The terrain transitions into steep, unstable talus fields, alpine tundra, and highly exposed ridges along the Continental Divide. At these elevations, fields of loose rock slow rapid movement to a crawl. What looks on a map like a single connected line is a complex three-dimensional environment where a single step can lead off-trail in several directions. A climber faces sheer drop-offs to the north and vast, unmarked scree slopes descending into multiple isolated drainages. In this high-altitude zone, physical barriers and route choices multiply, turning a projected path into a wide, challenging search area. On September 27, 2023, the weather station in nearby Estes Park recorded a high of 68 degrees and a low of 38, with light afternoon rain and westerly wind gusts reaching 18 miles per hour. Higher up along the Continental Divide, early autumn conditions were far more volatile. Near the summit of Mount Alice, the terrain already held 2 to 4 inches of fresh snow and patches of alpine ice. Official search updates noted that high-altitude winds and low-hanging clouds repeatedly reduced visibility, complicating ground operations and grounding rescue helicopters. These late-season elements created a demanding environment for search and rescue teams, though public records do not establish the weather as the direct cause of the disappearance. Rather than explaining what happened to the runner, the sudden arrival of early snow serves as a primary reason why locating physical evidence became an immediate and overwhelming challenge. On the morning of September 28, 2023, the planned day-use window closed without word from the runner. Family members contacted park authorities to file an official overdue report, initiating a rapid response from Rocky Mountain National Park personnel. Rangers immediately checked the designated exit point at the North Inlet Trailhead on the western edge of the park. There they located his 2015 Subaru Outback, parked and silent. While the vehicle confirmed his point of arrival the day prior, investigators treated it as evidence of his intended destination rather than proof of his final coordinates. Because his route spanned a massive multi-basin loop, his actual position remained entirely unknown. To manage the escalating situation, the park mobilized specialized search and rescue teams. Concurrently, the National Park Service Investigative Services Bureau assumed an active investigative role, coordinating with local law enforcement to analyze digital records and incoming public tips. The physical search began immediately. Ground crews pushed into the heavily forested corridors of both the East Inlet and North Inlet trails, scanning the margins for footprints or discarded gear. At the same time, early ground and aerial reconnaissance assets, including fixed-wing aircraft and helicopters, flew low over the high-altitude basins below Mount Alice. Spotters searched the steep, snow-dusted rock faces where the runner sent his last message, looking for any sign of movement against the gray alpine terrain, while coordinators established a unified command post near the trailheads. On September 29th, the search operation expanded dramatically as coordinators stretched their grid across the Continental Divide, moving past the immediate trail corridors to target a series of high-altitude sectors. Over the next several days, ground crews and aerial assets systematically swept a vast, rugged expanse of alpine terrain. Teams focused on Boulder Grand Pass, the slopes of Mount Alice, McHenry's Peak, Arrowhead, and Stoneman Pass. The grid further expanded to encompass Chief's Head Peak, Thatch Top, Powell Peak, Andrews Glacier, and the high-elevation corridors linking these peaks. By October 1st, the operation reached its peak mobilization with 55 personnel, including 38 dedicated searchers working directly in the field. This group combined federal park rangers with specialized regional partners, including Larimer County Search and Rescue, Grand County Search and Rescue, the Rocky Mountain Rescue Group, and Front Range Rescue Dogs. On October 2nd, the resource count adjusted slightly to 51 total personnel, keeping the core of 38 field searchers active alongside 2 dedicated canine units. While ground teams moved across unstable talus and high-altitude scree, aerial units attempted to bypass the physical barriers of the terrain. The Colorado Department of Fire Prevention and Control deployed a helicopter to insert search teams onto remote ridgelines, while drone crews captured high-resolution imagery of the steep basins below. A fixed-wing aircraft equipped with heat-sensing technology scanned the high-altitude zones, though strong mountain winds and patches of fresh snow repeatedly limited the clarity of these aerial sweeps. To protect the integrity of the ground search, coordinators implemented highly specific tactical measures. On October 5th, park officials established a temporary scent distraction closure in the North Inlet area. This restricted public access to the drainage, preventing recreational hikers from contaminating potential scent trails and allowing the search dogs to work without interference. Yet despite this massive coordination of ground personnel, highly trained tracking dogs, and advanced aerial sensors throughout late September and early October, the expanded search grid yielded no physical trace of the runner. The wilderness offered no clues. As the calendar turned deeper into autumn, the physical limits of the search area became absolute. High-altitude winter storms brought sub-zero temperatures and accumulation of ice across Mount Alice, turning the exposed ridges of the Continental Divide into direct hazards for ground searchers. Aerial support, heavily dependent on stable wind conditions and clear visibility, faced frequent groundings as unpredictable mountain drafts swept over the peaks. On October 10, 2023, the National Park Service formally announced the suspension of broad-scale search efforts. Officials stated that no further clues had been discovered during the 10 days of intensive tracking. This suspension was strictly an operational decision, reflecting the safety of the responders rather than a final determination of the runner's fate. Large-scale grids ended and the park transitioned to a limited continuous response model. Under this protocol, rangers investigate specific new leads as they arise, leaving vast expanses of the backcountry unsearched but monitored as seasons change. The final point of contact remains the noon text message from September 27th. This message was a general location statement sent over a standard cellular network rather than a verified GPS transmission containing precise coordinates. The public record contains no documented communication after this moment. Similarly, the physical record along the high-altitude route remains entirely blank. No clothing, running gear, or personal items belonging to the runner have ever been recovered. While his ambitious 28-mile itinerary is well documented on paper, there is no physical proof to confirm which high-altitude waypoints he actually reached before vanishing. Search teams found no evidence establishing a specific fall or accident site, and no human remains have been publicly reported as recovered in connection with this search. This total absence of material traces establishes a definitive boundary. The physical record documents only a sudden cessation of movement, leaving no evidence to support any specific outcome. Without physical clues, the investigation balances documented facts against unproven explanations. The primary possibilities remain conventional wilderness hazards: a sudden fall on the steep talus of Mount Alice, hypothermia from dropping temperatures, or a disorientation that led to a deviation from the planned route. However, these scenarios remain entirely unconfirmed. The expansion of the search grid across multiple basins was not proof of a route change, but rather a direct reflection of searchers operating under geographic uncertainty. Similarly, the absence of any recovered gear or remains cannot be used to support one specific theory over another. While speculation sometimes arises in unresolved disappearances, no official evidence supports a conclusion of foul play. The final movements, exact coordinates, and physical outcome of Chad Pallansch remain completely unknown. The latest verified records from the National Park Service state only that the investigation continues while the case remains unresolved. Today, the peaks of the Continental Divide keep their secrets. As each season passes, the blank spaces on the map remain. The wilderness is not just a landscape. It is a reminder of how quickly the familiar becomes the unknowable. What do you think lies beyond the search? Let us know in the comments.